from the heart of Texas. Thank you. Oh, silencers. My name is Derek McCaw. I am the editor-in-chief of FanboyPlanet.com, a site that's been around for 26 years, 25 of which I have known this man to my right from his work. I actually just got to meet him face-to-face for the first time Thursday night, but we've done stuff on Zoom. We've had conversations. I am vaguely a horror writer, but I'm not from Texas, but I have a story coming out in an anthology that's supposed to be announced shortly. So I'm getting back into the horror comics game through that. So that's me, and it's nothing me.
Doesn't that make you Derek Macabre?
That is my alter ego. I am Mr. Macabre. Yes. To my right, I want everybody to introduce themselves and say their their work. I've got a slide for that, but here you go.
Oh, that's me. Howdy, y'all. I am Drew Edwards. I am the writer and creator of the long, 25 years long running underground comic Halloween Man. I am a two-time Ringo nominee for Best Writer. I am a Best of Austin winner. I am a member of the Castle of Horror podcast. I am considered something of an authority on classic monster movies. I am also the co-writer of the Matron.
I'll get there because after you, here is
this man.
Yeah, all right. So my name is David Bowles. I'm an author and translator, professor, and a bunch of other stuff from deep South Texas. From a Mexican American family that's been living in South Texas and northern Mexico for like 250 years. So, when people are like, "Oh, all those Mexicans down on the border," I'm like, "Yeah, we're here before the United States existed." I've mainly written for teens and children, and a lot of award-winning books, and have done some screenwriting and so forth. But I'm here to talk about The Matron, which is this really, really cool feminist slasher comic that Drew and I are writing, and it's illustrated by the wonderful Monica Gallagher and colored by Harry Saxon in like this really, really eye-popping and brilliant color. So we're super excited about that. Right now, we are doing through the publisher IPI Comics. We're doing a Kickstarter that is kind of like giving people the opportunity to pre-order and get like an early glimpse before the issues start being distributed in 2026. And there's lots of really cool swag and so forth. But yeah, a 55-year-old woman who takes up an axe and puts on the mask of her grandmother, who was a serial killer in the 60s and 70s, and decides to kill the rich to solve her problems. So it's just a really, really great.
It's a heartwarming tale.
It's a heartwarming tale.
And we'll talk more about it in a little bit.
Yep.
Do you want to, of course, mention then?
Oh boy.
Also from Texas.
True. I'm from San Antonio. It's the part of Texas where a lot of Scottish people moved a long, long time ago. Married a lot of Mexican people, and now all my relatives are Scottish Texicans, and so that's just normal in our family. So I assume the mariachi bands should always do the national anthem. That's the part of Texas I'm from. I've been in LA for 30 years now. My dad was a military pilot, so we had to move every 6 months growing up because my dad trained people who joined the Navy in Scottsdale, Arizona, or wherever where there's not water, and so we would go to make sure that they did what they were supposed to do when they got to the boat and didn't kill everybody. So we had to move a lot. So we just took Texas with us wherever we went, so you didn't have to root for the Eagles 1 month and then the next town root for Patriots then. So that was the Texas side of the story. The LA side of it is I broke in at Image Comics when Image got started. 10 months later, I was working on the X-Men cartoon as the character designer on that. That was my first TV show. I've worked a lot in TV animation, video games. During the pandemic, when I was the busiest I'd ever been, I was directing on 3 shows at the same time, but then, because that's how things work out, they all wrapped on the same day. So I'm like, yesterday everybody loved me, today I'm looking for jobs. So I thought, instead of just jumping back in, what are the things I love? And I love monsters, and I've loved them since I was young. So I'm like, I'm gonna make a company where we sell monster movies and make monster comics. And so that's what I've been doing since the pandemic, is just like kicking off my own stuff. And I've been doing Kickstarters to do that. If you go down to the toy booth at CCE tomorrow, the Rocketeer toys, I'm working on those with buddies. and they have the whole Monster Force line, and the Sky Captain figure is my first toy I've gotten off the ground. So that's.
And also, you have you have what, 3 more books coming out this fall.
Yes.
So you have your Kraken, which is sort of a monstrous Doc Savage.
Yes, I'm again going back to the Sky Captain wall. I'm friends with the guys who created it. I'm like, I want to create a character so my guy can team up with Sky Captain since we're doing the Sky Captain stuff. So it was largely like, this is a great excuse to play with my friends, but I want monsters in mine. So that's where kind of Kraken sprung out of. My buddy Dave Hartman, we've worked together in animation for 30 years. We've worked for Zack Snyder on a bunch of the stuff he's done lately. He does all the Rob Zombie videos. He's also a monster guy, so it's a perfect collaboration. Russ Savager is a screenwriter buddy of mine who wrote one of the Underworld movies. He's also written a ton of other stuff. And we're doing that with people at Panick Entertainment who aren't set up here, but they have a panel tomorrow with David Dasmalchian. Saturday.
Today's Saturday, that's right. Yeah, that panel's tomorrow.
Yes, so tomorrow. And then the last one is also with David again, and it's Spectres, and it's kind of loosely tied into Kraken the way like Stephen King's got his Dairyverse, where they're all their own thing, but if you're paying attention, then you start to realize there's threats. Because I just want them to be their own thing, so if you don't like that, but that one's set modern, it was just my way of like, I told Dave, I'm like, I just want you to draw some monster hunters, don't tell me what it's going to be. So that was a fun one because I love working with him, so he threw me the drawings, and I'm like, okay, now I got to come up with a story for this. So that was where that one sprung from. And those 2 books, Kraken and Spectres, will be coming out from Titan Comics, who is set up downstairs. They're doing all the Conan books.
Yeah.
And you just launched a Kickstarter for a cryptid. Was the title.
Yes, because I'm crazy. I launched it at the start of Comic-Con, and then we funded at 3 a.m. on Thursday, and then I was like, I'm heading down to Comic-Con. We're good to go. So that's a Monster Forge presents. It's basically cryptids of the United States.
Very cool.
That's me.
I think you can tell from Shannon's voice, he does not sleep in order to accomplish all these things.
4th panel, let's go.
And the last panelist I think he was on
Invisible.
Yeah, he's invisible.
He's invisible because I think he was on 25 other panels this weekend, and it's Comic-Con guest Jim Kruger, who is not from Texas, but he was willing to jump on board this. And I have to say, I've gathered people whose work I admire and respect, and I'm so glad that it turns out actually not only do I like you, but you seem to at least like me enough to say, yeah, I'll do this panel.
Yeah.
So thank you. So Jim grew up in the Midwest near where Eddie Keane did his work, and why we were going to include him was because, of course, that he knew the original story of Ed Gein, which got translated to cinema to become a Texas story, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we will talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a little bit later, probably. He's also writing a horror book from IPI Comics and is publishing Matron, which is The Human Fly versus Dracula. Is coming, I think that's going to kickstart in a month.
I did not know about this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it is really cool.
Oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's great that they've got this team-up book, and I know Jim has a good explanation for why the Human Fly has had to fight Dracula for centuries.
Does anybody know who the Human Fly is? Because I loved this book as a kid, but they only made so many because I didn't know how like sales worked, and I was just like, why is it known with Human Fly?
Yeah.
He's a real stunt man.
Now,
Marvel made books of him, so
Canadian stuntman, and now he's back through IPN Comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I put the ad together and I asked Google, show me, I want a lonely road in Texas, and this is the image they came up with. That Google came up with. Right, see, now I see your disbelief. And
isn't that Monument Valley?
that is nothing more, it could be. So I'm Californian. I've flown into Dallas for work. I've been to Austin for a comedy festival in a previous life, and that's it. But yes, these fine gentlemen gave me quite a ribbing, shall we say, politely, for about 5 days of like, is that Texas? Is that? I don't know. If you say it's Monument Valley, Utah, it's like Texas.
I think
but
it's AI and it's many
no.
places.
Anyway,
It's just AI.
Just say Utah is like Texas.
I was gonna finish up only much more religiously conservative. Drew and I have talked about this before. Texas is all worlds. It's like going to Scotland, where you can experience all weather in a day. In Texas, you can experience all geography in a day. only it takes like 5 days
Right.
to get around. But so let's talk about the popular imagery. Like I mentioned, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You think of that it's flat, that it's dusty, and it's covered with human blood. So but you are all from different places in
Yep.
Texas.
Yep.
You, Drew, are from the most magnificently named town in America.
Possum Kingdom, Texas. It is a lake. It is a real place. Look it up. Where I grew up looked nothing like that. Where I grew up looked probably more like what you would imagine Louisiana looking. And point of fact, I was chased by an alligator not once but twice as a child. My parents' idea of child rearing was to hand me a shotgun and a machete and tell me, come back when the sun goes down, don't get eaten by anything. So I lived a very rural, but boggy, marshy, swampy, lakey kind of version of Texas, which doesn't look like that at all, but is super spooky looking and lends itself very much to imagining not just fearsome real animals, but monsters of all kinds.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think that, I'm from deep South Texas on the border with Mexico, where my family's lived like for 250 years, since they came up from deeper in Mexico. And between San Antonio and where I live in the Rio Grande Valley, there's this place that's called, it's historically called the Wild Horse Desert, but it isn't desert, it's brushland. It's like, scrub land, full of like, sage and mesquite and stuff like that. So it's not really a desert, and there are no mountains. I was devastated when the Netflix Selena miniseries came out, and they showed the border crossing between McAllen and Reynosa, and it like had mountains. I was like, it's a floodplain. There are no mountains. It's really, really sad. But it's something that that because of production costs or whatever, like so many things are just literally just filmed in California, and so California doubles for everything. Like you're watching a Star Trek episode, and you're like, yes, they filmed that like whatever close to Burbank, or you can tell from and I grew up along the river, and it is what we call a thorn forest. So there's lots of
Thorns?
Yeah, trees with thorns. So like Huisache and mesquite and all these different types of really great, and lots of cactus, but not desert cactus. The kind of cactus that you can eat, and we do. It bothers me to no end to see Texas kind of depicted as this dusty desert, and the hill country.
It's actually only 10% of the state.
Yeah, and so like the hill country where you're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and which is there's a lot of the DNA of the Matron is from
Texas Chainsaw
from your
it became life as a Texas Chainsaw
Massacre sequel, as a pitch to the sequel. We definitely wanted to depict the hill country as it actually looks, and the people there as they actually are, so that at least in the pages of the comic, that maybe one day will be adapted as a film.
And it also can be filmed in California.
Yes, exactly, and because it's set during
And
the
Shannon will be art director.
yeah, since it's set during the Great Freeze in Texas when Ted Cruz left to Cancun, we kind of need to film it somewhere else because it's unlikely that it's going to immediately snow in the hill country.
Unfortunately,
Yeah. So this is one of the bugbears. So Texas is basically like maybe 6 different biomes. You've got the hill country, you've got the piney woods, you've got the whole coastal plain, you've got the desert of the west, and
where I'm from, which is
And Monument Valley.
and you got Monument Valley somewhere. I don't know, hidden among the hills.
But how about you, Shannon?
You mean as far what was the question?
Like
I'm just
depiction,
enjoying that.
like the visual depiction of Texas.
Oh yeah, again, growing up where I moved all the time, it drives me bananas. But I also get it because I realized too, I think it's like 80% of people never leave the area they're from, and so they don't have that visual language. And I get why, because I've worked on TV and film, and sometimes you have a big budget, and sometimes you don't. They're like, this is close enough. They're never going to go there. They're never going to know that. It's pre-internet was why a lot of that stuff was shot like that. But it is one of those things where I'm like, what was the Brolin movie, No Country for Old Men.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Takes place in Texas. I used to live in New Mexico. I used to know. I hiked on. I'm like, that's Texas.
That is New Mexico.
And they swap a lot. There's a new Texas show with somebody help me out. I work with him on Vegas. What show is that? It's great. Josh Duhamel.
Yeah.
And it's it's doing really well. That's also takes place in Texas. Shot in New Mexico. So the whole country is monstrous, and Texas is definitely one of those too, where people just have their idea of Texas. When they go to Europe, they're like, people can point out Texas on a map. You know, it's like it's got its own identity, whether it's true or not. It's like all of us. I think what we're trying to get across is like we're bringing our truth to like, well, this is how it is where I'm from. It's kind of like comparing, like Austin and San Antonio get lumped in a lot because they're close, but it's like San Diego and LA have they're about the same difference, but they are totally different towns. The people, like the ways that everybody's Texan, but the identity of each city is so unique, and then the geography changes it, you know. So.
And I think you were telling me too, Drew, that like as I said, I used to go to Austin for a performing a comedy festival, and if you go in one direction, you get like the hill country, and the other direction
you start to get into what is called the Piney Woods, which look very
like Louisiana.
Yeah.
You know, almost every term you've used for the areas has sounded scary.
Texas.
Also, there's something to get the thorny, and again, Possum Kingdom.
Possum Kingdom has a very notable rock formation known as Hell's Gate.
Again, this does not sound reassuring. So that kind of leads into my next question, which is, what about you're far from the only horror writer, Joe R. Lansdale being a very famous horror writer from, among other genres, from Texas. But what about that growing up there drew you to horror, or is it is it a nature versus nurture question?
The very first thing that I remember as a kid is watching a horror movie with my dad. We were watching a movie with him about the giant ants. And so I was a monster kid pretty much from the get-go, but there's not a whole lot to do where I grew up, so I spent a lot of time at the drive-in, and I saw every new horror movie that came out, all of the Freddys, all of the Jasons, Godzilla 1985, Ghostbusters, like just that whole glut of pop culture from that time period. And I was fascinated by that, and at the same time I was going to the video store and I was renting Universal monsters and 50s sci-fi and Hammer and all that stuff. So it was an escape, but it was an easily imaginable escape because where I grew up, again, it just lended itself to it, especially when you thought of stuff like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was easy to imagine that kind of thing. And in fact, we'll get into that later, but there's just kind of a spooky edge to rural Texas, and especially during like the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, which was sort of like the pre-internet days, so we were still kind of cut off. I actually have very vivid memories when Friday the 13th 3D came out, and I was talking about it in Sunday school. And the minister.
That's one does.
The minister.
So there you go. That would not happen in Utah. All right, so there you go.
The minister said, "Don't go see that movie. When they make 13 of them, it's going to start the apocalypse and release Satan from hell." And of course, every little boy in that Sunday school, I went home and was like, I want to see that. And so like when
I listened to the VCR 13 times.
While all the kids in my class are pretending to be Han Solo, I was pretending to be Jason Voorhees.
That tracks. And I mean, I grew up, so the Rio Grande Valley, especially in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, was like the closest like actual civilization was San Antonio. And it felt like so far away, you had to get in the car and drive 4 hours through like empty brushland basically, except for Alice, which was just like an oil town. And because I come from a family of storytellers, I also grew up hearing a lot of really scary stories that were rooted in the borderlands, and so there were stories of like the Headless Horseman of Hidalgo County, or lechuzas, like witches that transform into owls and steal little children, and La Llorona, which you find in every Mexican-American community in the entire country. But for us, my grandmother used to tell us that it was a mother who had drowned her children in the canal near my grandmother's mobile home in South McAllen. So, you grow up hearing these kinds of stories, and I would hear them in the company of all my older cousins, and there was something cathartic and like really cool about being scared out of your mind, but in the company of family, because like you knew that the lechuza was going to come flying through the window and steal you away because you were with the rest of your family right now. Later on that night, you might be scared, and I kind of just caught the bug of like spookiness and scariness. So when I learned to read and went to school, those are the kinds of books that I looked at as well, the kinds of comics I read, the kinds of movies that I also watched. I was definitely a monster kid, just like the two gentlemen on either side of me as a kid, and that just draws you in. And there's just, in my own writing, one of the things that I try to do is draw from the folklore of my family and our roots in Mexico, and bring that in. In addition to it being Texas horror, it's decidedly like Tejano horror. It's like Mexican American Texan horror, and that's, to me, what gives things like a unique kind of twist. And I've worked on lots of different books that do that kind of stuff, and a couple film projects like Black Demon, and this shark movie that came out a couple years ago. I don't know if you caught it on Amazon Prime.
It's on my watch list.
Yeah, I mean, the script I wrote for it was officially not filmed. They brought in a different screenwriter, but a lot of the DNA is still there. And I'm like, I came up with the idea of it being, like a servant of the gods, like, exacting divine retribution. But these kinds of things are a lot of fun for me to explore, to find ways of spooking people out, or creeping them out, or like scaring the shit out of them through these, the mechanisms of our shared culture in the state, as much as we have one, because it's like that's 6 different states, and Mexican American heritage as well. So it's kind of like the long and short of it. What about you? How Texas influence your work?
Oh, actually, what you were saying kind of tracked, because I was thinking about how much there's isolationism, but also I have family that have been there before it was the United States,
Yeah.
and so you grow up and it's very comforting. People have been there for a long time. Your great-great-grandparents were buried there, and so there is this oral tradition, but there's also like a safety. And then the first time you drive through Texas, pre the internet and cell phones and everything, and you're like, I'm gonna die out here. I can't read this map while driving at 70 miles an hour. I don't know where. I don't even know if I'm in the right spot. It's like, so there was that. All of a sudden you start realizing like I could die. But I also camped a lot, and the oral story, like my grandparents were old enough that they were pre-TV. So you told stories when we go camping, and they had so many stories. And every time I'm like, I've known this dude for my entire life, and then suddenly they bust out a new one, and you're like, I've heard this ghost story.
It's great.
And so
I love that story.
I love that there was this sense of like them trying to like terrify the grandkids.
It's great.
And they're like, go to bed.
It's a very Texas thing, man.
So they could go drink Lone Star around the fire together, and you could still hear them like, I'm into like 10, I can hear you. So I think it's just the size of it, and the whole ghost story is such a big part of Texas culture. So for me, that was kind of it. And then and then moving around, I took bits of that with me, and then New England is where I kind of got introduced to like monster movies, because I have a buddy, Kevin Greaves, created Underworld. He was on the panel with me last night. We didn't realize like we were living like 3 miles apart from each other when we were young, but we were watching the same monster creature double feature, and we just assumed everybody in the world is watching this, and then found out, it's just a thing they show in like the Boston area. So your influences come from all kinds of places, but the Texas of it all is kind of what got it.
And it's interesting because I was going to ask a question about, you all referenced being monster kids, and I can't remember which Hammer horror film I was watching behind the scene or the commentary from Kim Newman, who is this great British horror writer, who made it almost like a derisive comment about, in England we did not have monster kids, we just grew up being fans. And so Monster Kids almost because the people that introduced that concept to me were like people like Gary Gamble as well, who are Texans. So again, what I think we're dancing around that. What is about this that brings the Monster Kid phenomenon to the fore? Sounds like you were picking it up in New England, Shannon, to some extent, but certainly, I said, Gilmore Lansdale, Gary Gamble, great comics artist, and Kutu, Drew, and David.
I do think that what Shannon's saying about the wide openness of the state, and like it's just vast and mostly flat, and despite your image there. In 10 years, we'll still be like picking on you about this thing. I just think that vastness and like literally. So I drove here, right? The first, it took me 2 days, but like most of the first day was just Texas. It's just never ending, and like you begin to despair.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're going 70, 80 miles an hour, and you're like, when the fuck am I getting out of the state? Oh my
I
God.
get texts now from people who are doing their first road trips cross country, and they're like, I'm still driving in Texas for 13 hours. Is this normal? And I'm like, just keep going.
I think also, like, there's, I hate to keep harping on this, but, where I grew up, there wasn't a whole lot to do. So, like, you have hours to spend. Like, if you find an Aurora model kit of the creature from the Black Lagoon, you have the time to do that because again, there was no internet yet, so like you don't mind spending around your hours gluing together, model pieces and painting and that kind of thing. It's the way we spent our time was different, but at this I also had a very easy time because of the environment that I was in, like pretending that there would be, because an alligator and a dinosaur is not that far from each other, but I'd watch like a Ray Harryhausen dinosaur movie, and then I would go play in the woods, and it was easy to imagine dinosaurs or werewolves or, space aliens, whatever, because like you're just walking around this marsh all day, and you just project yourself into that in your imagination, and the isolation of it really just makes your imagination go wild.
What I think is fantastic is I have a lot of young relatives now who are into horror, and they still come into it kind of the same way, maybe a little different here and there, but they have access now to stuff we didn't have. I think there's an ability now to like, if this is my jam, I can now become so much more knowledgeable versus how it took me many years to be like, there's no internet, so I gotta bump into somebody who told me about this thing from this other friend they heard it from, and then go track it down. And so like, there's horror anime, there's just Netflix stuff, they can find the old Hammer films. They have access to so much, and it's great.
It's cool, but don't you kind of miss the hunt? Like I remember, when I was reading Fangoria, back in the day, they would put like a picture of like an obscure horror movie, and you would have to hunt around and like swap meets and video stores and things like that until you found somebody that had a copy of it. And I just, it is great to have all of pop culture at your fingertips, but part of me kind of misses the treasure hunt aspect of it.
I don't know how you find pop culture with all of it at your fingertips. It's the sort of thing, because Drew's alluded to it, the concept of drive-in, which I know is not just Texas. We had them in California. It sounds like we're very old. We had them in California. And we drive in, you go, and you sneak people in the trunk. And but that you have the 2 or 3 movies that were often, at least 2 of those 3 were crappy. But you got exposed to a lot of really random stuff.
Yeah. The same thing is true of the fact of only having like 3 stations on the television or whatever. So, here I think we're like now beginning to encroach into kind of like nostalgia. But, one of the other things I think, and Shannon kind of alluded to this, is like the layeredness, the cultural layeredness of Texas, and its like deep roots, and how it's been under the control of so many different groups, and it was on its own republic for a while. It was a Mexican state. It was on its own republic, and then it was brought into the United States, and there have been successive waves, and my family is also like Scots-Irish Mexican, and there are in the Hill Country get lots of Czech people, which
German.
is and Czech and German, which is like what the Matron is like focusing on, and all of these different traditions have kind of commingled and then been compressed just by also the way the rest of the world looks at Texas and its expectations of Texas.
Well, people think Texas is crazy.
Yeah.
Like there's
They're
no
not
there's
entirely
no way.
wrong.
Yeah, but you talked about how like Ed Gein being an influence on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the phrase the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it feels right. And I don't think there's any other state that has that kind of reputation.
And
Chainsaw Massacre, no, right?
No, the interesting thing is, and I'm sorry that Jim's not here to add in, but I mean, Ed Gein, who also influenced Psycho, or inspired Psycho.
And Silence of the Lambs.
And Silence of the Lambs, was actually in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, Chainsaw Massacre.
Does it have the same
No, it doesn't. It's like going through cheese.
Yeah, the Wisconsin Cottage Cheese Massacre.
But how did it logically become Texan? It's a story that became Texan.
Yeah.
Well, Leatherface is almost afforded real person status in Texas. Like, it's weird how much Texans love leather. Like, you'd think we would hate being associated with an inbred.
Yeah, go ahead, sell the state to me.
It does have the name Texas in it. Texans, we like it.
It's like
Let's build that into you as a
The movie,
kid.
it's been branded with our name.
Yeah. Leatherface has a bad attitude, and Texans have a bad attitude.
yeah.
So
He's all about family to the exclusion of everybody else, and that's
Literally.
Texas as well.
Yeah, as a kid, I don't know if it's still the same because I haven't lived there a while, but it was always like, you don't want to mess with us.
Yeah.
But also, if you break down the middle of nowhere, it'll probably be a Texan that stops to pick you up. And it was like this balance of kindness and I will take you down.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was like, oh my God, there's a lot to juggle, a lot to pack in. But I think that also, if you're from there, that's a very commonality amongst us.
Yeah.
Well, is it true that like the anti-littering campaign, the Don't Mess with Texas was anti-littering?
Yes.
And it has become this, nobody knows that's what it's about.
Yeah. So we just got that 15-minute.
You used to be able to stop at the rest stops and you could get the sticker from like the travel, and I would always get those and give those to friends.
Yeah.
It was a promotional campaign.
So let's focus on your books, because everybody does have something to. All this Texan insanity perhaps has twisted through, and I think yours, Drew, is this fantastic. I mean, 25 years is nothing to sneeze at, but it's a fantastic, distillation of everything you love.
Yeah, including Texas. It takes place in Texas. Halloween Man is best described as the weird adventures of a zombie superhero and a sexy mad scientist girlfriend. He eats his bad guys, and he has the power of the horror movie sequel. He always comes back. It takes place at a place called Solar City, which is a retro-futuristic metropolis that stands where the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex stands in our reality. And while it has superheroes and flying cars and robots and all this stuff, it also has demons and ghosts and werewolves. But we play with Texas folklore a lot. In fact, David was talking about the Headless Horseman of Texas. There is a Headless Horseman in Halloween Man that is a recurring bad guy, but he's not the famous Sleepy Hollow Headless Horseman. He's the Headless Horseman in Bimble, Texas, El Muerto.
Yeah,
and which is a very Texas tale. I'm not gonna get into all of it. Like if you want to
Google it.
Google it. Yeah, read a book.
Will the ghost donkey make an appearance?
The donkey lady has made an appearance.
San Antonio loves their freaking donkey lady.
Donkey lady. A donkey lady.
I know some of you guys are going, what? It's like literally like this weird distortion of the Llorona story. For some reason, San Antonio decided that she has the head of a donkey. Anyway, it's just great.
It's because a Mexican was telling it to a German relative that translated it to
their
a
Czech
telephone.
friend.
And
by then it's like, and she was a donkey lady. And I was like, what?
What?
Oh, all right. That
In
is not what I
fact,
said.
if you Google search Donkey Lady, there is a cryptids throughout the United States website, and they have clipped artwork from Halloween Man
That's cool.
and for their
That's
picture
good.
of the Donkey Lady, because I love. There's like a phrase that in my head for that I use for the tone of Halloween Man, because it's this collision of horror and sci-fi, but also southernness, and I think Texylvania. That's the Texylvania. So yeah. You should consider checking out the Red 5 Omnibus, or if you don't want to wait because you're so intrigued, I have books on me that you can purchase right after the panel. I'll give them to you for $10 so I don't have to take them.
But yeah, the omnibus is at Red 5's booth, and both you and Shannon have books available on globalcomics.com, which is a great online comic service, and a lot of Halloween Man is there.
And all of it is on.
And I know at least Ghosted, right, is on, and was the other one you just reprinted through Monster Forge?
I've been taking books I did with other publishers and starting to run them through there, so I'm trying to remember which one is Gut Wrencher.
I just ran, that's one I just ran a piece on, yeah. So, it's available. I want David to talk about the Matron, because I'm afraid that your wife will never forgive me if you come back with no voice.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. He's better.
Okay,
He's
so
better at it.
David, talk about the Matron.
So yeah, the Matron. Drew and I were at this lovely little teen Comic-Con convention. And that's whatever. I don't know what it's called.
Central Texas Comic-Con.
Texas Teen
It's a mouthful.
Comic-Con, yeah, in Round Rock, right outside of Austin. And we loved going to it. It's really great, and they bust in all these kids, and it's fantastic. And I was there with my daughter promoting a graphic novel series we have for upper elementary and middle schoolers. And things were in a lull, and I walked over to Drew, and we started chatting. And he told me about this pitch they had created for a follow-up, a modern sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which would show Leatherface as an old man. And I mean, eventually there was literally a movie made that was intersected in a lot of ways with the ideas that he had. But it had been passed over.
Mine was better though.
Yeah, I think it was. And so it had, they had passed on the pitch or whatever, and I told him, dude, the ideas that he had for talking about, what is the Cannibal family like 40 years later, and how they've tried to grapple with how the world has moved on, and trying to put the past behind them, but something happens and it triggers it. And I told him, that's such a wonderful idea. You should just change everybody's names and make it like your own IP. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized that this is something that we needed to do together. And so we ran in on it. And one of the early things that we realized we want to do is to actually set it in the Hill Country and make it really about the culture of the people in the Hill Country, where there's a lot of Czech families and German families, whatever, and draw from that and draw from the folklore. And as we started thinking and talking these things out, we realized that the best idea would be to gender flip this. And instead of having, someone who's essentially kind of like a child who's killing just to protect his family, to make it a woman. And so we said, because head of family started saying she's like a matriarch or whatever, and then he started calling her the matron, and I was like, the matron? Oh, the matron, that's badass. And so we used that as a title. And because we wanted it to feel in the same way like a sequel to something else, we created a backstory. We created this idea there had been an original matron that started her killing spree during the Great Depression out of need. Cannibalism out of need, and she had eventually been kind of killed in the same way. I don't know if anybody's seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and it opens up with the cops, the sheriff's department descending on the Sawyer family's farm, and there's this huge shootout. And I was like, I just want to steal that. And I want our book to start with a flashback to when the first matron dies, and this hail of bullets, whatever. And then we find her granddaughter almost 50 years later, as a waitress in this restaurant in a small town that's being gentrified, and she loses her job. and then she loses her home to eminent domain, and she, you know, just snaps, and then she puts on her grandmother's mask and takes up her axe and starts killing rich people and eating them. You know, so or the people that she's yeah. And we wanted her to be like, you know, a sturdy middle-aged woman. Somebody, she's put up with so much shit from people her entire life. She's put up with men, a lot of like, you know, the kinds of things that women face, and she's just not having any more of it. And we, you know, the more we talked about it, the more we started rooting it in Slavic folklore and mythology, and come up with all these really great things, a lot of which I don't want to reveal because it's more fun for you to discover them on your own. And then we said it during that freeze that I was telling you about. So she is, her like little tagline is, "I am winter, I am death." She's kind of like channeling
I see the movie poster every time you tell me that.
Yeah. I mean, the cover of the book of the first graphic novel that shows her, you know, with that axe, the blood trailing behind her. She's walking through the snow. It's not that one, but it's similar kind of thing. This is the cover for the second graphic novel.
And you told me last night you two were working on a prequel already, like a YA novel.
Yeah, we're gonna. So it's so much fun. We're gonna do, because her main kind of like, you know, opponents in this fight are two college freshmen and then this 70-something-year-old former FBI agent who is the only survivor of the first Matron. He's like the final boy. He's like the final boy blended with
Peter Vincent from Fright Night.
Yeah, Peter Vincent from Fright Night. It's really great. So we wanted to take the girls who are our main characters and show them in their final year in high school, which was also when COVID was happening. And so we were like, let's do like this Veronica Mars-y, you know, Good Girls Guide to Murder, Twin Peaksy kind of like, you know, small town mystery, and like have them like solve this mystery, and that way we can also kind of introduce the town to potential new readers or whatever. And so I mean, the world that we're working in is really big, and so that YA novel we're writing right now, and it's going to be coming out next year. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I mean, because I mainly am a writer of YA. I've won some awards from the American Library Association for my YA work or whatever. So
Slumming.
this is not slumming. I'm just really excited about it. So yeah, that's us. That's the Matron.
So Shannon, sum up everything you're doing in 30 seconds.
I make comics, those are them.
Okay.
That work?
He's like, I want to get back to LA.
We opened in 1920s Texas in Specters. So that was one where I was like, I'm gonna just put like all the places I went with my grandpa as the opening, and then lead into the story before we get into modern times.
Love it.
Yeah. 1930s pulp monstery, post-apocalyptic, everybody on Earth's killed. This guy is part monster now, and his job, he just wants revenge for every human that is not on the planet anymore. And he's just like, I'm gonna wipe every single one of these things out. And then Spectres is more of a Doctor Strange monster hunters group who, they're all victims. They were all damaged by monsters. But they actually, because I wanted to base it on like real world things, the monsters aren't really the problem. They find out it's all the billionaires who are, you know, using the system.
Again, heartwarming.
Yeah.
And of course, last year you had Kingdom Riders, which was a monstrous Pokemon.
That was a Pokemon meets Hunger Games. That was a slightly different audience, but it still had a lot of monsters. It was, you know, you're basically racing to the death, like Hunger Games, you know, to find out who's going to end up taking the throne from the current emperor. And the person that's doing it doesn't really want to race, but it's helping her friend, so that's why she enters on her giant mud toad.
Is this the same artist doing the covers?
On Honeyfar is down. That's the middle artist. She's
Honeyfar. No, I know Honeyfar is my friend.
Okay.
She did. Okay.
She did the cover, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then Dave Hartman, who does the Rob Zombie videos as Spectres and Kraken. And we got a nice Mike Mignola cover who created Hellboy for Kraken. That's the direct market cover.
Did you meet Tahani back in 2016 when we met at Worldcon? She was there because we were all part of that.
I did not.
We were all part of that Mexican Next initiative that John Picasso brought when he was.
Yeah, that's when we met, but I know I met her.
Yeah, she was like
at the Baycon.
She had a great Lady Death reveal cover that they announced at the show this week.
I know, it's amazing.
I and maybe this sleep deprivation making me impulsive, but I totally want Halloween Man and Kraken to fight each other.
I swear to God, if that happens, I'm gonna be so happy that the two of you finally met and collaborated and did that. That'd be awesome. You know, we only have a few minutes left. I know.
You
You're
can
like,
go to 11 if you want.
we're having fun, but does anyone have any?
10 o'clock, we have no other panels. So
I can't go.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, before we
Jazz hands?
Jazz hands. We could, yes.
I can.
Kingdom is also the name of a song from the 90s about
Toadies.
a guy trying to convince a girl to let him kill her.
Yes.
So
That is
That is-
disturbing.
that is-
and you know,
It is that is
lead
actually-
singer is from there, so
Yeah, that's
The lead singer of the Toadies is from Puzzle Kingdom.
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing to
He sounds
find.
nice
They're
guy.
in a
Alligator
Dallas-
Chases and the Toadies.
Yeah, they're a Dallas band, and that is actually one of the only things people usually know about Possum Kingdom, which is why most people don't believe it's
I
a
found
real
out
band.
about that like a couple of weeks before finding out that you were from there.
Possum Kingdom is also the site of a relatively, I mean, as these things are relatively famous UFO abduction. There was a, speaking of chainsaw massacres, one of the kids I went to high school with who were pig farmers. One night, the mom got fed up with the father and hacked him up with a chainsaw and then threw his body into the lake, which she should have fed to the pigs. We all
But right, I thought that's where the story was
yeah,
going to go.
no. So like,
Act two,
there's
rewrite.
there's a lot. There's a
The
lot.
producer's note.
Yeah, there's
Feed to the
a
pigs.
lot of creepy stuff about where I grew up. I always say it's the redneck version of a Stephen King town.
I think also a lot of our kind of the things that non-Texans know about Texans are mostly from the past. You know, you think like Farrah Fawcett and you know, everything's bigger in Texas.
Texas, Dallas, what we call a Dallas blonde.
And Dallas.
Yeah.
The showdowns, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but which I think is what I like about it being Solar City is it's the retro future, and if you anybody here who is not from Texas, and I speak as the ultimate outsider, but when I go into one of those cities, it's like I take it back. I have been to Houston, which reminded me of being in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And so I had to go there for work once, and I mean, it's just not what anybody thinks. Which
Not for nothing, but Houston is also where they film more porn than any other place in the Bible Belt.
in the Bible Belt, thank God. 'Cause I live in Burbank, and no, I think
There's actual,
the
yeah.
record.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when talking about like names of places, so in the Matron, the town in the Matron is called Ascuas, which means in Spanish embers, but it also means kind of like suspense or like tenterhooks. Like when you say "me dejaste en ascuas," you left me on tenterhooks. So it's kind of a cool name. And the county itself. So does anybody know what the name of the county that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre happens in? Does anybody remember?
It's Travis County.
No, but I mean in the film, like what it's supposed to be, because it's not.
No, it's supposed to be Travis
It's
County.
called Hell County in
In the script.
in the second one. It's called in the second one.
No. You're thinking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D.
3D. Okay, it's 3D. Yeah, okay. But I mean, in one of those films,
I know, I remember.
the sheriff is depicted as being Mexican American. So our sheriff is Sheriff Maldonado. So there's just all this stuff like that I've just been picking out, like just stealing from the different chainsaw films and ours. It's I remember we were going to call it Hell County
We
originally.
were. We didn't have what's
because
the
it
original
was
name.
because I think it was something like Like it had the county had a Spanish name, but it wasn't hell. It was something else that was suggestive of hell. I can't remember right now. Maybe like Diablo County. I don't know. But then I called it Averno County, which Averno is Avernus, which is like the entrance to hell and Roman mythology, whatever. So just a little trivia about names. I always have fun playing with names and giving things bizarre names.
David is the deep thinker in our creative team. I just like writing stuff where people get axes stuck in their head.
When we're working together, it's so much fun. Like because we write separately a lot of time, but whenever whenever we're like trying to break a script out, break a story, we'll get together. And I was at his apartment, and we're like talking about like scenes where the matron is killing people, and he grabs a baseball bat, and I'm like, oh shit! And he starts, and then she's coming, and he will physically act it out, so we can you know, what do you call it, block the scene, so we can like actually
block action out.
Yeah, block the action out, and he does it physically with. He doesn't have an axe, thankfully, or maybe you do have an axe.
I have an axe, and I just.
He was a butcher. He worked as a butcher, so he knows just about how much force you need to cut through bone. But all these really inappropriate things to know, that are very useful.
Go for the joints.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Okay. And on that note, I know that a couple of you need to get to sleep.
Or to drive to LA.
Or drive to LA. So, again, I have gathered 3 people that I consider friends. I'm so grateful to know you, and thank you for coming and having
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no,
This was fun as heck.
I got to talk about Texas and California there. That feels kind of subversive somehow.
Thanks for watching. The party's not over. It's just going to be a little bit quieter from here on out. Please hit the subscribe button and visit fanboyplanet.com for more content, because you never know what's coming next. I know I don't. And remember, use your powers for good.